Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, we're about to uncover the heartbreaking truth hidden inside the old father's final handwritten letter. A secret so powerful that it leaves both Jack and Tu Tien filled with regret throughout the entire night. If you enjoy emotional stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video. Now, let's dive into today's incredible story. Jack and Tu Tien discover the final letter. The truth leaves them heartbroken all night. The evening air had grown unusually quiet. The last rays of sunlight slipped behind the distant hills, painting the sky with warm shades of orange before slowly fading into deep blue. The small lotus pond that Jack and Tu Tien had spent days building reflected the fading light like a mirror. Neither of them spoke. The mysterious envelope rested on the wooden table between them. For several minutes, Jack simply stared at it. His fingers hovered over the seal more than once, yet he could not bring himself to open it. Tu Tien gently reached over and rested her hand on his arm. "I think, whatever is inside, we should face it together." Jack nodded. Taking a slow breath, he carefully broke the seal. He expected to find more legal papers, perhaps another property deed, maybe documents explaining the inheritance. Instead, a single sheet of neatly folded paper slipped into his hands. The paper had already turned slightly yellow with age. It was handwritten. Jack immediately recognized the careful, slightly shaky handwriting. It belonged to the old man. Without realizing it, both of them leaned closer. Jack unfolded the letter carefully. The first line immediately made him pause. "If the two of you are reading this letter, then I finally found the courage to tell you everything I have kept hidden in my heart." The room fell completely silent. Jack continued reading aloud. "There was a time when I believed the rest of my life would be spent completely alone. After my family fell apart, I stopped believing that people could truly care for one another without expecting something in return. I had money. I had land. I had houses. But none of those things could keep a lonely man company." Jack's voice became quieter with every sentence. Across from him, Tu Tien lowered her head. She could already feel tears forming in her eyes. The letter continued. "Every morning I woke up wondering whether anyone would notice if I disappeared. Some days I spent hours sitting by myself watching families laugh together in the marketplace. I would smile, but inside I wondered what I had done wrong to deserve such silence." Jack stopped reading for a moment. He remembered every time the old man had quietly appeared without asking for anything. He remembered the vegetables that mysteriously appeared outside their door, the tools that somehow arrived just when they needed them, the quiet conversations by the garden, the gentle advice. At the time, Jack had believed those were only small acts of kindness. Now, they carried a completely different meaning. Jack swallowed hard before continuing. "Then I met the two of you. At first, I only intended to observe from a distance. I wanted to know whether kindness still existed. Day after day, I watched the two of you work together. You never complained. You never argued over money. You shared every burden. Even when life became difficult, you still found reasons to laugh." Tu Tien quietly covered her mouth. She remembered those difficult months vividly. They had struggled. Sometimes they barely had enough. Yet somehow they always believed tomorrow would be better. Jack kept reading. "One afternoon, I accidentally dropped my walking stick outside your gate. Before I could bend down to pick it up, Jack was already beside me. He treated me with respect even though he barely knew who I was. That day, something changed inside me. Jack slowly lowered the letter. I don't even remember that. Tu Tien smiled through her tears. You've always helped people like that. Jack looked away. To him, those moments had never seemed important. But to someone who had lived in loneliness, perhaps they meant everything. He unfolded the letter once more. The next paragraph was written more slowly. Some words appeared darker, as though the writer had paused several times while holding the pen. I have lived long enough to understand one painful truth. Blood alone does not create a family. Sometimes, strangers become the people who stay beside you when everyone else walks away. Jack's voice cracked. Tu Tien could no longer stop the tears rolling down her cheeks. Then came the sentence neither of them would ever forget. I never imagined that complete strangers would care for me more sincerely than my own relatives ever did. Silence filled the room again. Outside, the evening breeze gently stirred the lotus leaves. Neither of them noticed the darkness settling over the yard for a long time. Neither Jack nor Tu Tien spoke a single word. They simply sat together, holding the old letter that had revealed a loneliness they had never truly understood before. The night had only just begun, and neither of them realized that the final pages of the letter would reveal an even greater truth waiting to change everything forever. The silence inside the house lingered long after Jack finished reading those unforgettable words. Neither of them reached for dinner. The tea on the wooden table had long since gone cold. Jack folded the letter carefully before opening it once again, almost afraid he had missed something important. Near the bottom of the page, another paragraph began. The handwriting looked noticeably weaker. It was as though each sentence had required great effort. If you have read this far, then perhaps you finally understand why I chose to trust you. Many people believe I gave away my property because I have no one left. That is only part of the truth. Jack exchanged a puzzled glance with Tu Tien. He continued reading. The real reason is much simpler. I have already experienced what it feels like to lose everything that truly matters. After that, money became nothing more than paper. A house is only a building. Land is only soil. Without people who care for one another, none of it has any meaning. Jack slowly leaned back in his chair. The words echoed in his mind. He had worked hard his entire life, believing that financial security would eventually bring happiness. Yet the old man's letter described someone who had possessed everything and still felt completely empty. Tu Tien gently wiped away another tear. I think, she whispered softly, he never wanted us to inherit his wealth. Jack looked at her. He wanted us to inherit his hope. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Outside, the crickets filled the quiet night with their steady chorus. Jack unfolded the final section of the letter. The closing paragraphs felt deeply personal. Jack, there is something I have never told you. The first day I visited your house was not an accident. Jack frowned. He kept reading. Someone once told me about a young man who always helped others before helping himself. At first, I refused to believe such people still existed, so I decided to see for myself. Jack gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. I never knew. Tu Tien gently squeezed his hand. You've never done good things to be noticed. Jack nodded quietly. That had always been true. Helping people had never felt extraordinary. It was simply how he had been raised. The letter continued. During those first few weeks, I intentionally created small situations to see how you would react. Sometimes I asked unnecessary questions. Sometimes I pretended not to know simple things. Sometimes I purposely arrived when both of you were already busy. Not once did either of you show impatience. Tu Tien laughed softly through her tears. So that's why he always came when we were working. Jack smiled for the first time that evening. He was testing us, but we never realized. They both remembered countless little moments. The old man asking for directions he probably already knew. Stopping by just to watch them repair the fence. Offering small conversations while pretending to admire the flowers. None of it had seemed unusual. Now everything made perfect sense. Jack resumed reading. People reveal their true character during ordinary moments, not during grand occasions. That is when I discovered that kindness still exists. Not in speeches, not in promises, but in everyday actions. Jack slowly lowered the page once again. His chest felt strangely heavy. The old man had seen value in things Jack himself had never noticed. Small acts, simple gestures, quiet compassion. Perhaps those were the things that mattered most. The final lines approached. Jack found himself taking another deep breath before reading them aloud. Tomorrow morning. If you still wish to visit me, please don't come because of the property. Come because I would like to share breakfast with my family. Tu Tien could no longer hold back her tears. She covered her face as quiet sobs filled the room. Jack gently placed the letter on the table. For several minutes, they simply sat together. Finally, Tu Tien spoke. We're going. Jack nodded immediately. First thing tomorrow. No excuses. The rest of the night passed almost without sleep. Jack found himself remembering every conversation he had ever shared with the old man. The advice, the laughter, the gentle smile that never seemed to disappear. He suddenly realized something that filled him with regret. He had spent so much time thanking the old man for material help, but he had never thanked him for becoming family. As dawn finally arrived, soft sunlight spread across the courtyard. Jack and Tu Tien prepared a small basket. Inside were fresh fruit, homemade steamed buns, warm tea, and several lotus flowers picked from the pond they had built together. They wanted to bring something meaningful, not expensive, just sincere. The journey to the old man's home took less than an hour. As they followed the narrow country road, Jack expected to arrive at another large house. After all, the old man owned several valuable properties. Instead, they stopped in front of a tiny wooden cottage, standing quietly beneath several old trees. The roof showed signs of age. The walls had faded from years of rain and sunlight. A small vegetable garden occupied one corner of the yard. Several chickens wandered peacefully across the dirt path. Tu Tien stood frozen. This is where he lives? Jack slowly nodded, equally stunned. Nothing about the place suggested wealth. There were no luxury cars, no expensive decorations, no signs that the owner possessed considerable assets. The front door was already open. The old man sat calmly on a simple bamboo chair, smiling as though he had been expecting them all along. You're here. Jack stepped inside. His eyes wandered across the small room. The furniture was old. Several pieces had clearly been repaired many times. The fan turned slowly overhead. A single bookshelf held only a few worn books and faded family photographs. There was almost nothing of monetary value. Jack felt a painful lump rise in his throat. He could no longer hide his confusion. "You own so much, so why do you choose to live like this?" The old man looked around the humble room with peaceful eyes. Then he smiled. Not sadly, not proudly, simply with quiet contentment. He slowly poured 3 cups of tea. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I saved everything, because there is still one promise that I have not fulfilled." Jack stared at him in complete silence. A promise? What promise could possibly be more important than living comfortably in his final years? The old man looked toward the faded photograph resting quietly on the shelf. His smile became distant, as though he had returned to a memory from many years ago. Jack suddenly realized that the greatest secret had not been written in the letter. It was still waiting to be told. Jack and Tu Tien opened the mysterious envelope and discover a deeply emotional handwritten letter from Jack's former father-in-law. In it, he reveals years of loneliness, regret, and the surprising reason he chose them as his true family. His words leave them heartbroken, realizing how much pain he had hidden behind his gentle smile. The next morning, they visit his humble rented home and are shocked that a wealthy man lives with almost nothing. When Jack asks why he saved all his possessions instead of living comfortably, the old man reveals that he still has one important promise left to fulfill.